Hey, everybody. Welcome to our critical Q&A number 491. Live. Welcome. Hello. If you're not joining us live, you're joining us later, then hello in the future. Weird how that works. Anyway, hi. Having a Sunday. Let's see. A couple things. Let's set over to the host and chat screen so we are good on that. Hey, everybody. Okay, good. Yeah, everybody's showing on up here. And we have lots of things, a few things to go over. Let me get some setup done here first, though. I do have my prompter back online there and everything. So let's get the Q&A portion of this going in the chat box for you guys while I go over some other things for you. Please put your questions here and something like that. Start Q&A. All right. Yes, philosophize this. Yes, I definitely want to do that. All right, let's throw this over there so I will be able to see it over here. And let's also blow that up a little bit. There we go. So I can see the questions as they appear on the screen in front of me. I'm looking at you guys, but I'm also looking at the chat box with the questions. The chat is there on the screen, as you can see there as we're live. So, what I see in front of me is your questions that you're putting in the little question box that I just posted. All right. So I have a couple things to go over real fast before we get into all of that. First thing is I am doing a public talk. I haven't done one in a while and I really miss it. And so I was invited to do one at the Secular Hub here in Denver. Let me switch over to my other page here so I can actually show you. This is the from the Hub website. The talk that I'll be doing is on coercion, propaganda, and extremist thinking. Very strange things for me to be talking about. I'm probably just going to wing it because I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to those things. But I'm going to do my best. They're doing a fundraiser at the Hub, and this is something I'm doing to help support the Hub and also, of course, get word out about this stuff. I'm supposed to maybe not talk directly about politics, but I'm pretty sure in our current climate that's going to come up. So I wanted to throw that up on the screen for you guys so you could see the address and everything if you all wanted to go. Now, speaking of going places, the other thing I wanted to share with you guys was I've said, get out there, get active, get in your community, do things right now. You have a voice, use it. Why not? What's the worst that can happen? Well, maybe a lot of things, but still, it's your voice, and you should use it. So I used mine anyway, and I wanted to share with you guys a couple shots of Bernie and AOC came to Denver this last, just a couple days ago. And in fact, was it? Yeah, 2 days. Yeah, Friday. Yeah, Friday. Sorry, I had a root canal yesterday too, so you'll have to pardon me if my days are a little fluffy right now. But anyway, this was the shot at the Civic Center downtown, where our the courthouse and the mayor and the government offices and all that are. That's a shot of the place where Bernie and AOC gave their talk before. You can see some people there, but not very many. Then this was the crowd that we were standing in later on, about an hour and a half, 2 hours later. I was just surrounded by people. We could not see the actual stage from where we were standing, but we could hear. They had these speakers set up everywhere. And then here's another shot. of that same thing. So you can see I'm just panning my camera around, but this is all the view I had while we were there. But I wanted to share that, that we went out there and 34,000 of my Colorado resident community were also there. And we're protesting and we're rallying and we're listening to them talk to us and stuff like that. And we made our voices heard. 34,000 people showing up, I think, was one of the largest. If I believe Bernie posted, it was the largest rally they'd had. That I think Bernie's been to larger rallies than that many people in his life, but on this particular tour, apparently what they're saying is that everywhere they're going, they are they're expecting 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, and what they're getting is 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people showing up. Up in Greeley here in Colorado, they showed up at a place. Gabe Evans is a MAGA supporting Republican up there, and he won't meet with his constituents, and so they went up there and met with his constituents and many other people. They expected about 2,000 people, and about 11,000 showed up, and they had a lot of fun at that. And then they came down to Denver and showed up here, and so it was just your regular political rally. I wasn't expecting a whole lot from it, more than just showing up is the point. Being there is the point. And a lot of people showed up. And so I want to do more of that, and I want to throw out to you guys to also be part of that. Okay, good. So we've covered that. We covered that and that. Yes, the other thing is, let me go back over to our screen here, take that off, because there is our Benson cam. Excuse me. This was our little bundle. This is our little bundle of furry joy. This was just within the last hour. I shot this at the house here. And you can see he is actually chasing down. Mel is in the kitchen. And we had to put these little child door up between the kitchen and the rest of the house, because Benson will not stop barking at these two cats who live across the behind us, at the house behind us. And the cats don't come into our yard or bother us or anything like that, but Benson just won't let it go. So anyway, so his nose was alight there because Mel was also at the same time opening some cheese. He really likes cheese. Not that we don't give him cheese. I don't think it's good for him. So we don't feed him from the table ever. I put that rule in early on when he showed up. No table feeding, because once you start that path, it just leads to big dogs, maybe health issues, other stuff. I don't know. But anyway, my dog. There you go. There's Benson Cam. One thing that I wanted to share with you guys before we get into the questions today is a fun tool that I am taking advantage of that has been useful to me. Not in any significant way yet, but I imagine that it could be, and it's going to be interesting to have this to hand. And I've never relied on, not never, but in all the years we've been doing the Q&A show, most of the answers you've gotten have been just off the top of my head, or I will dig up and pull up some particular documents or, quotes or something from, Scientology or from other materials, if I don't know or I needed to reference something, right? But very, very rarely have I had to lean too much on going back to the books or having a library around or something like that, because I knew a lot of way more Scientology than I wish I did. Well, recently there has been this. I was made aware of a tool that Google offers as part of their assortment of things that they give you for free. And Google's not high on my list of like, great companies, but some of the tools clearly are, ubiquitous and very much part of how we run our lives. And it would be a big imposition if we had to reorganize our lives to no longer have Gmail, for example. And this is another service that's similar to Gmail, where it's just this free thing you can use. And it's called Notebook LM. And it's basically this place where you can upload repository, knowledge bases, PDFs, videos. You can link it to websites. You can upload stuff, and it will use that source of information that you give it, and you can feed it for free on the free ones, which I'm using. You can give it 50 different sources of information in your bin of sources, and you can then write queries against those sources, and it won't go too much to outside sources beyond general knowledge, but it looks specifically to the sources you've given it for specific answers to questions or briefing or information or analysis, which I don't lean too heavily on because I do my own analysis, but the information retrieval aspect of it is incredibly useful to me. So I uploaded all of my, I have a pretty extensive digital library recreated now of, I had it and then I lost it, then I recreated it, of Scientology materials. And I put all the books, all of the technical volumes, all the tech stuff, not any of the lectures though. But I am, because I filled it all up with all the books and all of the technical volumes. And so that was 50 sources all by itself, but that's a lot, including a bunch of the confidential stuff. And I put it in as a source of, I can query that. So I have that to hand here today if it comes up that we need to get, if that appears useful in some fashion, then we might use that. It's called Notebook LM. Okay. Interesting. All right, let's get on with, now that we've delved into all that stuff. Yes, those were all the things I wanted to cover before at the beginning of the show here. I think everybody's now kind of, who's going to be here is here. Let me, sorry, I'm going to get my, yeah. Okay, good. Just having a little intimate show today. Okay, so let us get on with it. Let's go to the top question. And this is the one I always have to read off the screen here. All right, E. Phoenix Art, what are your thoughts on the Mission Earth dekalogy? Talked about this a little bit recently. Let me tell you a bit more about it. So, in the 1980s, after writing Battlefield Earth as his 50th anniversary, gift to the world as a sci-fi writer, and Hubbard was a, legit sci-fi writer. Nobody can take that away from him. And Battlefield Earth was sort of his magnum opus, his big, big work. And I've had varying degrees of opinions about Battlefield Earth over the years, but where I've settled now is that it's a bit heavy on the silly and a bit light on any kind of characterization or plot structure that really makes a whole lot of sense, right? So, not really my cup of tea. After writing that, Hubbard then engaged in a... I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to describe it that way. Sorry, I was going to go somewhere. I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to say Hubbard then wrote a 10-volume series, which was a modern satirical take on, with sci-fi elements of modern Earth, planet Earth as of the 1980s when it was being written. And it really, the 10-volume part of it was more marketing than it was necessity. The book is not really, the series does not require 10 volumes. It's the whole thing, the whole story could have been told in one big volume, 2 or 3 serialized volumes, like a trilogy. 10 volumes was a bit ridiculous. And when they were printing these books, by the way, they were also using big type and spacing and whatnot to blow these things up to be bigger, literally, physically larger representations of full books than they really are, if I remember right. And the idea with the Mission Earth series is that there is the hero of the story is a guy named Jethro Heller, and he's a combat engineer. And this is, he's blonde, blue-eyed, Hubbard's typical heroic figure, right? Hubbard writing himself, although not red-haired, he's always blonde in Hubbard's sort of, dare I say, Aryan view of the perfect hero. You know, I don't connect those dots too heavily. Hubbard was no Nazi, but it's just kind of funny that his ultimate hero was always the blonde, blue-eyed, you know, super smart, super tough, super competent, you know, heroic figure. Hubbard's, actually, as I'm sitting here right now, I'm thinking of a criticism of Hubbard's heroes that I don't know that I've ever actually put this way before, and it very much applies to the Mission Earth series too. It just occurred to me, like a duh. Hubbard's protagonists don't change during the course of the story. They experience failure, and they experience a need to, you know, come back from failure. So they are challenged during the course of a story. Hubbard doesn't completely violate the hero's journey, 3-act, you know, sort of plot structure of heroic action stories. But his protagonist, this is why I realize this is why he annoys me so much as a writer with his heroes, is because his heroes don't realize something about themselves through the course of the hero's journey that is their own source of failure, that they change or, you know, have their epiphany moment. You know, usually that happens near the beginning to halfway through the 3rd act, right? And, oh, right, I'm, you know, and boom, 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 and the hero changes and the story changes, and it's a story of growth, right? Anyway, I'm sure everybody knows all this stuff, but I'm just saying Hubbard doesn't write his characters that way. I think that's one of the reasons why his heroes annoy me, because they don't really change throughout the course. They're perfect at the beginning, perfect in the middle, and perfect at the end. They just have challenges they have to overcome. And that's not really as exciting as, and is not as connective as writing a story about somebody who actually experiences personal growth, right? Anyway, that all being said, Jethro Heller is this heroic figure who is tasked with introducing technology. No, what does he have to do? There's a sort of a little bit a la Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There's this galactic empire, and they have Earth on a timetable of conquering. They're going to conquer Earth as part of their expansion plans throughout the universe. They've got this all figured out and scheduled out, and they've been doing it for millions of years. And so Earth is now, you know, going to be destroyed or conquered or something. And Jethro Heller is somehow sent out to Earth on some kind of a covert mission, and he decides, or somehow during the course of it, forgive me, my memory is a little vague on all these plot points, but he ends up on Earth pretending to be an Earth person and introducing climate changing science. Actually, at the time that Hubbard was writing it, there was the hole in the ozone layer was the big thing, and you know, and the Earth's atmosphere was being destroyed by pollutants, and which was very true, and changes were made in order to stop that from happening. But Hubbard introduces this whole alien technology that this Jethro Heller guy brings into Earth in order to save the planet, basically. And he is, through the course of his adventures here on Earth, he interacts with the mafia and the government officials and the FBI. The course of his journey takes him on a path where he gets to where the author Hubbard gets to satirically look at all the aspects of ridiculous modern society, right? From the media to entertainment to sex to Hubbard's very strong views on perversion and LGBTQ and how awful and horrible it is, and how it's actually a plot by the billionaires to undermine society by making sex unpopular or perverted or so horrible that nobody wants to have anything to do with it. This is all in the Mission Earth series. It's all in there, laced throughout as Hubbard's, vitriolic, biting satire of modern society. That's how Scientology presents it. So that's kind of what this series is, as I remember it. They skewer everything. A lot of stuff on psychiatry, of course, on sex. There's all kinds of sex stuff. I don't mean necessarily graphic sexual acts, but there are scenes where perverted sexual behavior and really over the top stuff, gross stuff happens. There were a couple scenes I remember reading where psychiatry and some of the sex stuff, and Rockefeller, who I think is called Rockacenter in the books, but he's referring to the billionaire class and uses Rockefeller as the sort of example of the billionaire control of society and how they restructure society to make it worse, and use psychiatry as their enforcement arm. And so that's all in these books. And there's some kind of gross stuff around some of that. Like I said, it goes on way too long. It's 10 volumes just for the sake of being 10 volumes. The story itself, shrinks very quickly in terms of if you just broke it down to the actual story. I'm trying to think. In the end, it ends up back at the Galactic Empire, and there's some big resolution where Earth ends up fine and Jedro Heller comes up on top, and the bad guys in the Galactic Empire who were trying to corrupt the system and work it to their advantage and use Earth as a pawn or something, somehow this whole thing is blown up, and goodness prevails in the end and all of that. So, yawn. That's kind of Hubbard's thing. That's what I can say about it, right? It's those are my thoughts about it. It's not biting satire unless you're a Scientologist, at which point you're seeing the world through the lens that Hubbard sees it through. And it informs an awful lot of the later conspiracy theories that were used and developed in Scientology, in the Sea Org, by Sea Org recruiters. The people who did that, because there were only a couple of Sea Org recruiters who were responsible for putting the briefings together that used conspiracy theory to recruit new Sea Org members. I've talked about that at length, made whole videos about it, and a lot of the thinking of what's in those conspiracy theories and how those briefings are put together and the attitude with which they're put together really does come out of these Mission Earth books. A lot of the Scientologists I don't think they even read the Mission Earth series anymore. I don't think they even know much about it. I don't think the church does much with it outside of whatever Author Services is doing at sci-fi conventions or something. And for the most part, the thing I'm hearing is that when they go to sci-fi conventions, they sit off in the corner by themselves and don't really reach out very much. And no one's interested in what they're having to sell, right? Nobody goes over to the Author Services booths. I'm not, that's what I'm hearing. If any of you know or have firsthand on that, I'd love to know what your observations are on that. But Author Services, of course, is the organization that deals with all of Hubbard's fiction, and they're pushing it all the time. So I think they still push the Mission Earth series, but it's not like it's ever really been been a very popular book series. It was sort of elevated with inflated book sales, kind of in the same way Dianetics was, if I remember right. I don't think it had legit bestseller status, but could be wrong about that. I could be wrong about that. But it's certainly nothing, you know, that anybody is hanging on to as, oh yeah, Hubbard, boy, he really topped it off with that Mission Earth series, right? It was Hubbard's last hurrah as a fiction writer. It's really not much of a hurrah. It's more of a ho, you know. It's kind of a crash and burn, really. That's my take on it. Okay, so there we go. All right, Young Matador. Hey, Chris. Errol Morris's new documentary discusses the theory of Charles Manson and his cult being controlled by MKUltra. John Atack thoroughly debunks this. That's right, he does. Why is this theory still so popular? Because it feeds different ideas that people already have about why they think the government is controlling and secretly controlling things. One of the things about secrecy and control is that once you acknowledge that a group like the CIA or the FBI or any other alphabet agency, NSA, for example, are capable of things that you don't really, not only do you not know about, but you can't know about and could never know about, introduces this brilliant, constantly present scapegoat that you can always bring out. Well, it's the government. Well, of course, I mean, you know, what's the whole Men in Black series based on? Our collective paranoia about our own government. You know, and this is so normalized across the world post World War II because of intelligence considerations that we all just put up with it as a necessary evil in our modern society, right? Post World War II, we all decided, well, World War II was so fucked up and so awful that we never want anything like that to ever happen again. So we're going to agree to all kinds of controls and strictures placed on us in our society so that we will have protection and we can never see the rise of something like that again. Well, I think we can see right now that those controls don't work. They never do. There's no system that prevents these things from happening. Any system can be corrupted, and our systems have been, are being, and can be cleaned up just as easily as they can be corrupted, by the way. But it's the back and forth of this that is the conflicts of history. And I am answering this question because the downstream outcome of having an intelligence society, where basically a surveillance society, where we have to surveil and watch elements and parts of society in order to, protect the whole of it. The trade-off of that is that the government now has information that you can't have, and for your protection. It's an approach. It's an approach that is certainly capable of being argued against and argued for. There are pros and cons to a surveillance state. And I don't mean necessarily, when I say surveillance state, I don't necessarily mean full on 1984 Big Brother surveillance state. It's a spectrum, right? Having cams to control speeders at the various lights or on the freeway is a surveillance state activity, but not one that we all go, oh my God, Big Brother. Even though it introduces an awful lot of Big Brother elements when you start putting cams up all over the place, right? People in London sure know about that, have for years. England, I think, London's one of the most surveilled societies in the world. I talk about Big Brother, right? All for their protection. People agree to these things for their protection. And so the flip side of that is the paranoia that is created by not knowing, and by always not knowing, and knowing you're not going to know, and knowing you can't know, And you can submit as many FOIA requests to the NSA and the CIA as you want. If they don't want to tell you, they're not going to tell you. And that's something we put up with collectively, because individually there's not a whole lot we can do about it, right? And this is now ingrained in as part of our social contract. I say all of that to set this stage for why is it so popular that a cult would be controlled by MK Ultra, because MK Ultra was real. Because the CIA did do horrifically immoral things, catastrophically illegal things, to American citizens on American soil in the name of figuring out how to protect them. Introduced LSD, other hallucinogens, set people up with weird sex stuff. There was all kinds of weird shit that happened under MK Ultra, and we know only what we know because of the invoices and receipts, apparently, that were left over because they managed to successfully purge all the files. Right? So this just sets up so many question marks that just can't even be answered or won't be answered, that it creates this kind of vacuum into which go all these newfound question marks that may not be connected to MK Ultra at all, but boy, is it a convenient social scapegoat and answer to unanswerable questions or difficult, complicated questions. Rather than deal with the fact that Charles Manson was indoctrinated in a series of systems of control, and he successfully used those systems to manipulate and control people around him, rather than just deal with the harsh reality of that simple fact, people want bigger, sexier, crazier ideas. And this vacuum of, the CIA and MK Ultra in the 1960s, it's a pretty big vacuum because there's an awful lot of question marks around it. You understand? I hope I'm being clear that that this really happened and there are legitimate questions all about MK Ultra. It just so happens that Charles Manson isn't one of them. We have perfectly legitimate, valid, evidence-based explanations for why Charles Manson did what he did. John Atack has done championship research on this. I'm not going to take anything away from him on that. That's his. He did all that work, and he talks about it extensively. So, so that's kind of, I look at that as his baby, right? And he has done hours and hours and hours of work on that. And I trust his mind and his research capacity, right? Because he kind of proved that he knows what he's doing when writing a piece of Blue Sky about L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology. So, so that's why, so if you ask me about it, I'm going to lean over into John's answers on this and go, well, here's explanations that make sense. It includes Scientology. It includes some, prison time. It includes Manson and his mental state. It includes a social world of rebellion against authority, and it includes kids who are easily manipulated, starving kids. I mean, just a perfect storm of activity for Manson to exert control over people who were pretty easily controlled into horrifying things, which is the hard part. That was, controlling somebody is pretty easy. Controlling them, murder somebody, that's, you got to work on people over time for that. Well, Manson had the time and he did do that. So we have those explanations in place. Why do we need to go to the CIA? Right? The CIA is awful enough as it is. And with what we do know, based on evidence we do have, we can already show how bad they are. We don't have to make secret connections to make them out to be worse than they are. They're bad. I have very little positive things to say about that stuff. Okay, so, but there are an awful lot of people who will also make a lot of money by riding on conspiracy theories, right? Wild, salacious, titillating, answers or narratives to complicated questions. Well, I don't want the complicated answer. I want the sexy one, you know? People will ride that. So you do Google searches on this stuff and you come and you just fall into pits of misinformation about Charles Manson. Just volumes and volumes of utter nonsense written about that man by people who really, you know, weren't being very responsible in what they were doing. So that's my take on that, at least. All right, I think we probably yapped about that enough, but there you go. All right, what else we got here? All right, John O'Nolan. How do you respond to a Scientologist that says Scientology gives them a lot of practical tools for life? Is that just something that they say because it sounds good? No, that's how Scientologists think about how to talk about Scientology. They feel like it gives them something that makes them feel amazing. That's the auditing part, and that also is the epiphanies or cognitions, as they call it, that they have when they do their training. The epiphanal moments in Scientology, as I mentioned in my podcast this week when I was talking about transformative, you know, personal transformation and the myth of it, is that the high, the peak moment or peak experience that somebody has is nothing more than that. We like to imagine that these epiphanal moments accompany permanent life change, but they don't. If you don't restructure your life and reorganize things, then you know, you can have all the epiphanies you want about yourself and about your place in society or perspective or whatever, but that isn't necessarily going to result in a permanent change in your behavior, because habits, action patterns in our mind, in our brain, right? The neural pathways, in our body, the muscle memory, all of that doesn't change overnight, and it can't. So I go on a roll to say all of that because Scientologists, I'm convinced, my take, other people might have other things to say about this, and I'm sure they do, actually. But my take is that the glue that keeps somebody in Scientology are the peak experience moments and the trauma bonding that Scientology organizationally or institutionally does to its membership. You know, trauma bonding is like glue, right? It keeps you stuck between the alternating punishments and rewards. And over time, the punishments become more and more, and the rewards become less and less frequent. But when you're having them, those peak moments are still what keeps you involved and keeps you there and keeps you, or the memory of those peak moments is what keeps you going, right? That's my take on why people stick in Scientology for as long as they do, beyond the social habit of I'm here and it would be harder to leave than to go. That's another reason why people stay, is just simple inertia. So that if that's the case, that it's the peak moments and that sort of thing, then it's not really the practical tools for life that keep people on board. Hubbard's tools only work in very context-specific places and times, and they're violated all over the place. And I'll give you a simple example just to demonstrate this point. I'm not going to go on a whole roll about all of this, but just here's a real simple and obvious example. You want to talk about practical tools for life? There's a finance course. There's a few of them in Scientology about how to run your finances and personal economics. And it's not about balancing your checkbook or keeping lists or something. It's not that kind of advice. Hubbard gives other advice, like rules for how to use money in your life. And one of the things that he says is make money and then make more money, as you've heard for his churches. But another thing that he says is don't take credit. Don't take out credit. Period. End of story. Don't do it. No credit. Does any Scientologist follow that practical advice? It's actually pretty good advice. But do they follow it? Not one of them. Not one. So is it keeping Scientology working to blatantly ignore L. Ron Hubbard's clear-cut advice about credit? You know, like that's just one example of, you know, like I said, something obvious. They will tell you it's the ARC triangle, it's the COM formula, it's misunderstood words, all the stuff we talk about all the time. But we've debunked every one of those things so many times over that I don't think I need to do it for you again today. These practical tools that they fall back on, they only fall back on it from the point of view of confirmation bias. In other words, they remember the times that a tool helped them in some way and conveniently forget about every time they blew it off, didn't use it, or it didn't work at all. And they just conveniently forget about those times, right? Because it has to work. So I think that's why Scientologists respond this way. It sounds good. It's a great selling point for new people who are not familiar with Scientology to say, listen, it's not faith. You don't have to believe anything. It's like a toolkit, man. It's like it gives you these things you can do. You run into a situation, you don't know what to do. Do this. Oh, okay, I'll do this. And it works. Like, that's a great sales pitch for somebody who's looking for some real help. I've given that sales pitch enough times to know it works really good, but there's not a lot of reality behind it. You know, it's only at certain places and certain times under certain conditions that this advice is actually very usable. So yes, it is something they say just because it sounds good, but they don't actually believe that. All of this just to get to that point, right? That yes, it's bullshit, but Scientologists really believe it. All right. See what we do there. Okay. See what we got here. Rod Brown John. All right, let me go back up. Okay. Loved your last video on true change and growth. Could you mention the Aron Kyro saga tonight and how he's now head of Church Scientology in San Francisco and the demise of Braille Skateboards Company? Yeah, I need to watch that video that somebody put together. Apparently there was a real championship piece put together on Aron Kyro. He is a Scientologist who was a professional skateboard maker or was involved in the skateboard industry. And had a company that apparently crashed and burned at this point. And Aron is now running one of the San Francisco orgs. There's a building in San Francisco, which is the Church of Scientology of San Francisco. There is a day crew from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 in that building that works the day hours. And there's another crew of staff who come in on nights, on weekend nights and on the weekends to crew the building. And I think Aron's in the foundation crew, the nights and weekends staff. And he's a senior executive in the org if he's not running the show. I've been to San Francisco org many times. The old building back in the Tenderloin when people were literally, you know, it was in the homeless area where people were, it was bad. It was bad. To the new building, which is right across from the old, what's that insurance? Anyway, I've been to that building many times, and it's a really nice building. It's really compact. They got stuff really tightly cramped into that building, but it's a nice building. Aron is probably, the way I see it right now, with the knowledge that I have, which is mostly leaning on Tony Ortega's earlier reporting on him. I never met Aron or dealt with him directly that I can recall. He is kind of a poster child for, you know, don't get into a cult. I know it's not exactly like brimming with intellect there to say something like that, but, you know, like, he's gonna just, this guy, I can just see the future, right? I'm not sure what else to say about Aron right now. I wish I had more knowledge about him as an individual or person or his saga. All I can say is other people have done it far better than I can here today. So I'm going to kind of move on from that one. I'm sorry that I can't bring more on that one, Rod, but I don't have anything real smart to say. You know, professional, intelligent, let me say, maybe I can just say this. It's not the first time I've said it. Very professional, very intelligent, very high-minded, creative, incredible people can get sucked into a cult for the stupidest reasons imaginable. They just don't, right? So it just happens. Sorry, because of emotional needs. It's not about their intelligence. It's not about their ability. It's not about any of that. It's about hooking them on their emotions and on their needs. And Aron's no exception to that. And man, when you get hooked, it's intoxicating, it's thrilling, but ultimately it's, you know, not going to get you anywhere. Hey, hon, Johnny Good Boy Tyler is the best, worst character name ever. Boy, you got that right. Johnny Good Boy Tyler. Okay, Karen, my questions won't go in the questions box. Well, apparently they will. Oh, there you are. Yeah, you got it in later. Okay, good. All right, let's carry on here. Paula Pecorini, has ever happened that anyone would do auditing and meanwhile take psycho drugs by stealth to treat a depression that couldn't be treated otherwise? That's an interesting question. I never ran into anyone who it came out later, because obviously we wouldn't know this until after the fact if they confessed. I never heard of an instance of that. Hubbard talked in the early days about people going psychotic and using vitamins and supplements and drugs. He talks about benzos and, you know, things like that to experiment with auditing results in the 50-51 time period. He talked about that pretty openly. Then they kind of shut it down, and in the 1970s, it was all anti-drug. But anybody, no. I'm just kind of racking my memory banks right now. Just want to make sure when I say no to this, it's like, yeah, no, I never saw anybody do anything like that. Let me say this in answer to your question. I say the collective we. I can only speak from my own experience in sitting people down as a Scientologist and talking to them and giving them the dope on why psychotropics were bad. And I was pretty good at it. I'd read all the Scientology literature on psychotropics and on pharmaceuticals and why they were evil and horrible and Nazi-driven and Nazi-connected, and, you know, the Nazi origin story of it all and all that stuff. I didn't know about Farsec. That's super, super, super confidential in Scientology, that there's a planet that existed many, many millions of years ago that these beings came from that are now, that we think of as psychiatrists, right? That I didn't know about any of that. But I did know that Hubbard said that that there was a whole track thing, that they had been around in past lives, that it wasn't just something that was happening here on Earth now, and that psychiatry was true evil. So I was real good at selling people on getting the hell off of their drugs. And I will say, in my ignorance at that time, that I even encouraged cold turkey, just get off, right? That's better than continuing on. And it took me a while to get my head around, yeah, that's not the right answer. Stop saying that to people, right? To my shame, I really, really did not do anybody any favors with that. I wasn't behind this only came up a handful of times. This wasn't something that came up a lot when I was in Scientology, having to have this talk, but I was really good at it when it came around. So point being that I and other people in Scientology, again, we Scientology collectively, they're so adamant and sincere about their beliefs in the harm of any psychotropic medication under any circumstances for any reason. It is as absolute of thinking as you will ever find. It's interesting, actually, to say that, because there are very few things in Scientology that people are as absolute about as psychiatric medications. Just no, period, no exceptions. So I think that's why that I didn't see any example of this. So I'll just move on, but I just wanted to say all that. Okay. All right, here, what's the next one? Once a witness, Vernon. Hey. Will Pam Bondi get involved with any protesters harassing Scientologists or being belligerent towards them? You know, a couple weeks ago, I would have said, get out of here. That's crazy. But not anymore. This government is becoming more and more unpredictable on a daily basis. I don't know, it's totally fine. Hey, hon, I don't mind you putting it in the question box. I am a little concerned right now about this. I'm not majorly concerned, but I'm a little concerned. There are free speech issues in this country that are now front and center with being kicked off of a university campus, right? Being kicked out or being picked up by ICE or otherwise, being kicked out of the country because of something you said. This is we're watching the slippery slope being slid down. It's happening right in front of us right now. It's incredibly disturbing. There's no part of this that is good news. And you might look at all of that and go, well, that's just immigrants and bad people. And so, and that's always, that thinking is always how it happens. But specifically with Pam Bondi getting involved with protesters harassing Scientologists, I wanted to say that when you have government officials pimping for Tesla, the Secretary of Commerce, the President of the United States, it's beyond embarrassing. It's criminal, and it's because it's literally a violation of their office to be pimping for a product on the government dole, on the government dime, on government time. That's just, but again, precedent and law and the rule of law and order and norms and all of that mean absolutely nothing to the people who are in charge now. And so questions like this now become front and center because it becomes a real possibility. If this administration is willing to cozy up to Tesla as a company and Elon Musk as an individual, an unelected billionaire that nobody wants there, at least nobody with two gray cells to rub together. If you think Elon Musk is doing a good job in Washington, D.C., and what he's doing is necessary and important, your head is so far up your ass. I don't even know how else to describe you. I mean, it's just insane that this is happening. The entire Doge thing is so illegal. It is so off the rails. So once you let the door open like that, and the door is wide open, we're in the first 100 days, and the entire rule of law just means nothing to these people. So now you have an attorney general who is in Scientology's pocket. Could she step forward like she did with Tesla and say, if you're going after Teslas, we're coming after you as a domestic terrorist? Next week, could she say something like that about Scientology protesters? Of course she could. Easily. And do you know how many millions of people would stand up and support Scientology just because she did that? And suddenly Scientology protesting is no more. And suddenly Scientology is in the spotlight again, favorably with the entire MAGA crowd. And what would happen then? I don't know. Probably not good things. I don't think that's the kind of attention Scientology actually wants, to be honest with you. Because I don't think that long down that road is good things for Scientology. I think that's going to result in a lot of negative attention ultimately. But, predictions are a dime a dozen at this point. But this question, that's sort of my take on this and my reasoning as to why, right? Is once you let the guards down, once you don't have any guardrails on the road anymore, anything's possible. And driving right over the side of the cliff, like doing something like this, if Pam Bondi were to do this, not only would it be the grossest violation of our Bill of Rights, and free speech, freedom to protest, freedom to to get together. Not only would that be, a horrifying violation of our Bill of Rights, but it's the favoritism aspect of this that disturbs me almost more. The fact that the government or government officials are now singling out and favoring specific individuals or companies and promoting them, literally pimping for them from the mic as government officials in their official capacity. I mean, for many, many years, people have joked about how politicians should be wearing patches like race car drivers do with all of their sponsors. And, maybe next week they will. I mean, it's kind of that obvious now. So that's disturbing to me. It's disturbing. It's not a seventh seal of the apocalypse kind of disturbing, but it's like, what the fuck is going on here? How is this happening? You just don't even understand how could this person, how does Pam Bondi wake up in the morning thinking this is what I need to be doing from this office in order to make America safe and legally secure? Is I need to stand here and favor a billionaire's company who's illegally firing thousands and thousands. I just don't even, it makes no sense to me at all. So I'm a little out of sorts about that, as you can tell. Sorry. I'll move on. Once a witness, Vernon, do legal residents have to fear protesting because they may get detained and then deported? Yes, they do. That is very, very much a fear now. Whether you are a legal citizen of this country, born here, have a residence here, we're approved to be here, we're given okay to be here, all of that is now meaningless under the Trump administration. They do not care about the rule of law. And the other thing that I will say that I am deeply, deeply, deeply disturbed about is the people. I'm just going to be super, super chill and just say the men and women of ICE are the modern Gestapo. That is American Gestapo right now, ICE. And what's happening right now is the beginning steps of a not good future in any history book, anywhere, anytime. Once you start detaining and prosecuting citizens arbitrarily, based on no real law or rule of law, and with no due process of any kind given to them, that's it. It's over. So we need to fight back against that exact thing. We've got to fight back against it however you can. That's all I can say about that at this point. I know these are probably not popular things to say, but this is my channel and I don't know what else to say about it. It's just wrong. Okay. Once a witness, Vernon again. Are Cruz and Travolta aware of Scientology's human and child trafficking across state lines? Yes and no. Yes, they're aware of the fact that people in Scientology, public, staff, and Sea Org, dedicate themselves fully and completely to Scientology and will go above and beyond to move over state lines or even international lines to get work done for the church. All of it fully the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics, and therefore fully justified and correct and good. Whether it involves adults or children is irrelevant because they're all infinite, immortal spiritual beings occupying a body, right? So in Scientology, whether it's a child or whether it's an adult is of very little consequence, even to Tom Cruise and John Travolta. And this is where John Travolta also becomes a bit of a monster, because he's okay with stuff like this, because it's all for the greatest good, because it's all for Scientology, because it's all about bringing spiritual freedom to everybody, right? So this is even where good people like John Travolta can be blinded to the reality of human fucking trafficking within their own organization. Tom Cruise probably doesn't think twice about it. Tom Cruise is at a level where other people's needs or wants or cares or worries just don't matter to him. He just doesn't give a shit, right? Tom Cruise only cares about Tom Cruise and what Tom Cruise is doing and Tom Cruise's image, right? So that's Tom Cruise. Sure, he's aware of it, but doesn't think twice about it. All right. Okay, good. Okay. Karen Robertson's asking me to comment on the Panopticon prison planet idea. Okay, good. I will do that. Let me check something out here real fast, because I'm not familiar with the term Panopticon. I mean, I've seen this term. Oh, yeah. This institutional building. Yeah. I've seen that. Okay, I'm not sure what that relates to in terms of prison planet, but I am familiar with conspiracy theories and prison planet thinking. I followed Alex Jones for too long. Yeah. Oh, not plain. Sorry, guys. Just checking something here on the Googles. Okay, yeah, that was what I thought. The Panopticon is the prison that was designed by Jeremy Bentham in the 18th century. That's where I heard that before. The prison planet thing, you can clarify this for me, Karen, in the comments on the regular chat. But when you say prison planet idea, this is something that is definitely strong in Scientology. Hubbard uses the term prison planet, and I believe it was used. I first heard it amongst Scientologists just regularly talking amongst themselves, but I believe I heard it in a lecture as well from Hubbard. He certainly refers to this planet as a prison, no question about it. The concept is strong in Scientology that this is a trap and a place where we are stuck, Earth, specifically in the physical universe next. First we're stuck here, then we're stuck here, right? And this is by design. We are trapped here. Mostly through, Hubbard puts forward this idea of mental implants that have been like you've been brainwashed basically, like through intense use of pain and fear induction and electronics. You have been spiritually convinced of truths that are not true about your past, and this has been piled on you so many times that your past is a mess, a confusion of mismatching ideas and memories and things that is just a jumbled disaster zone for anybody trying to recall, what their life spiritually was millions and billions and trillions of years ago. And Hubbard says that this is all by design because these implants built up and built up and built up over time, and here you are stuck here. the product of numerous lines of civilizations that used electronics and brainwashing technology to destroy the minds of their citizens to create compliance cultures. And, you know, and then here we are being all, you know, we're all trapped here because we're so used to being compliant or rebels that we were sent here. In fact, this might be, now that I'm sitting here thinking about this, let me see if this is in here or not. Does, how about describe the 4 types of personalities who were sent? I'm testing my notebook LM thing here. For punishment. Let's see if it can answer my question about this. It might be in lectures, so it might not have the answers. In which case, I'll give it to you from my memory. Hubbard talked about the fact that there were different types of personalities who were sent here to Earth. Artists, criminals, political rebels, and I think there was one other class of person. No, can't answer that one. I think I have to enter some lectures into the notebook in order to get answers on that one. But these types of personalities were sent here on purpose by the various government forces that have been, you know, using Earth as a dumping ground for, you know, trillinia. So that's the Scientology take on the prison planet idea within the Scientology belief system. But there are many, many other conspiracies and worldviews and even religious ideas that put forward Earth is actually hell, or Earth is actually a prison, and we're all stuck here, and we have to earn our way out, or break our way out, or disagree hard enough to get away and get out. You know, that's what leads to, that's where Hubbard goes, is that being OT and being at the top of the bridge and being, you know, ultimately you, is all about disagreeing with the conditions that led you here and the conditions that keep you here, because you're just agreeing with all of it spiritually, and that's why it has any power or force over you at all. So if you just disagree, and the heart of OT, as it was carefully explained to me many times in Scientology by many OTs, the heart of being OT in Scientology is disagree. Oh, somebody says you can't do that, disagree. Somebody says this is the way it is, disagree. Society says you can't succeed, disagree, right? You just disagree. It can be its own kind of way of inducing some euphoria, inducing a little bit of a giddiness in people. You keep doing this with somebody, disagree. They get giddy. They ooh. It induces a very interesting state, and I don't know what the words are to describe that state beyond, you know, giddy or euphoric, but it does excite people to do that. And I think that's true outside of Scientology, you know. So I think that you can get a lot of mileage with people by, again, feeding them a secret truth or a hidden truth that nobody else knows or very few people know, right? And then give them some kind of like power over this thing so that they feel like they are in the driver's seat somehow, or they're the ones in charge, or, you know, they have a practical toolkit at their disposal so that, you know, life is their, you know, they're the ones in charge, right? Anyway, that's kind of the culty stuff that goes along with that. The prison planet idea doesn't obviously inherently put people much in charge of stuff, but that's where my thoughts go when I'm talking about this. Highlander too, that's right. That's right. Oh. You know why? I jokingly said this the other day. I'm sure this is not original to me, but I said the other day, the reason why in the first movie, Highlander, there can be only one is because there can really only be one Highlander movie, the first one. Everything they've done with that property since that first movie has been utter garbage. I can't believe how bad the whole Highlander IP has just one bad decision after another, after another, after another. All right. Good. So, fortunately for us, we are at a spot where we are at the end of our questions right now, and at a good time because I have to prep for some other stuff and get onto my show with recording with Tony today. So I still laugh about the fact that I used to do this show for like half an hour. Like the first couple of years of this show, it was like if I was going past 30 minutes, and it wasn't live either. Man, I thought it was like, oh boy, that's a lot. Anyway, now we can do an hour, no problem, easy peasy. Recognize these? Remember these? I realized the other day that I haven't been using these guys. These are our critical thinking cards. Nobody, I'm not paid. This is just free promotion on my part, but I love these guys and the products that these guys produce. This is your logical fallacy is.com. Schoolofthought.org would be two websites you can go to. Check this out. Oh my, hold on a second. I want to choke on live YouTube. That would be horrible. Something got in my throat. Okay. All right. So it used to be at the end of the show, I would read one of these, and I totally put it off. And I've had them here, and I keep telling myself every week, don't forget the cards. So here is the card we're going to cover. But first, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. All right, having a whole hiccup moment here. All right, your fallacy is genetic. Judging something good or bad on the basis of where it comes from. Something's wrong here. Hold on 1 second. Okay. That was really weird. I must have swallowed. There was like this little dryness or something in my throat for a second. No matter how much I swallowed, I couldn't get to it. Isn't that weird? That was so weird. I've not had that happen. Certainly not live. Yeah, weird. Sorry, guys. I think it's okay now. Yeah. Huh. Okay. Weird. All right. I'm going to finish this up and we're going to wrap up. All right. Genetic fallacy. Judging something good or bad on the basis of where it comes from or from whom it comes. Accused on the 6 o'clock news of corruption and taking bribes, the senator said that we should all be very wary of the things we hear in the media because we all know how very unreliable the media can be. I've never committed this fallacy here at this mic. Wow. That is just weird. All right. Well, try to give a teaching moment at the end, and look what happens. All right. Yeah, I definitely won't keel over. Okay, good. Sorry, guys. Better now. All right, I'm going to wrap up. Yeah. I wanted to also let you guys know that I am enjoying the hell out of Severance, and I've decided that it's going to be the first Cults and Entertainment show review that I'm going to do. And I'm going to do season 1 and season 2. I'm going to try to do them in one episode. I haven't even started season 2 yet, but I've got so much stuff to talk about with season 1 right now. And I'm going to like make a bunch of notes before I do all of it. It's not just going to be off the top of my head, but I've got some really big ideas on that one. it's a really interesting show, and there's a lot going on there. There have been a couple of recent write-ups and shows made about Scientology and Severance. I have a bit of a different take. There is absolutely stuff in that show that I find myself having reactions to from my time in the Sea Org. And it's trippy because there are not a lot of things in the world anymore that trigger me that way. But it was certainly interesting that Severance did. And this is on the second time watching it. The first time I was so glued, and I know it was 3 years ago too, but I was so glued to certain aspects and parts of it that I was having a lot of the same experiences I'm having the second time through, but I also didn't know what was going to happen. And when you have that mystery of not knowing where a thing is going, it's kind of a whole different experience from watching it the second time where you have some idea. So, and I'm going to go through it a third time before I actually do my final thing for you guys. But I wanted to give you that. It's probably not, you know, it's still a little ways away, but I wanted to give you guys that because I'm doing the work on that right now. And it's, how does Adam Scott say it in the show, right? The work is interesting and important. Macro data refinement, right? Anyway, good stuff. I am looking forward to that. There are a lot of parallels, but there's a lot more going on in that show than just that. So much more, and I really want to talk about all of it, at least as I see it. I think there's tremendous, tremendous stuff. And then the last thing I wanted to plug before I left, I actually put it on my notes this time. If you like the show, if you like what I'm doing, if you think what I'm doing is mysterious and important, then you can support me through Patreon, PayPal, whatever. All right, guys. With that, I'll see you guys soon. All right. Bye-bye.